Welcome everyone. Thank you. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy days, I'm sure, to spend some time with us. My name is Aurora Grant Wingate, and I am coming to you from the National Association of Community Health Workers, or NACHW, and I am their Member and Partner Engagement Associate, and I bring you greetings from Boston, Massachusetts. Before we get started, just a second or two, if folks are new to NACHW, we are a membership organization made up of community health workers. We use the term community health worker as an umbrella term for the many different titles that CHWs might hold, such as promotora de salud, a community health representative, and so much more. NACHW is a very young organization. Just this April, we turned 3 years old. And we came together after decades of community health workers working together across the country, wanting to create one central location to promote unity, professional identity, capacity building, policy development, sustainable funding, and so much more. We also came together to share resources on different issues that are important to community health workers. We know community health workers across the country are helping their communities navigate so many different circumstances, whether that is housing or food, reproductive care, and so much more. And we also know that community health workers can be really essential in helping people navigate certain civic engagements like voting or taxes. So that's why when the Coalition on Human Needs came and approached us about doing this webinar, we were really eager to see if this was something that community health workers were interested in, either for themselves or for their families and communities that they were working with. So with that, we are very happy to hand it back over to our host. Thank you so much for having us, and feel free to throw questions and everything in the chat as we go. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Aurora. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name's Alini Da Fonseca. I'm with the Coalition on Human Needs and Partnership for America's Children. And I also want to introduce my colleague, Julia Beebe, who will be available throughout the presentation. If you do have questions, she'll be answering them in the chat. We'll also have time at the very end for Q&A. So if you think of a question, don't think of a question until the end, we'll have time then as well to discuss. So, and Zoe, if you can share your screen, great. Thank you so much. So yes, welcome everyone. As Aurora stated, we are presenting this through the Coalition on Human Needs and Partnership for America's Children, and very happy to partner with the National Association of Community Health Workers to get this information out on the 2021 expanded child tax credit. Next slide. So the Coalition on Human Needs is an alliance of national groups, service providers, faith groups, policy experts, and labor, civil rights, and other advocates whose mission is to advocate at the federal level to meet the needs of people with low incomes and increase knowledge of positive outcomes from current or proposed programs. Next slide. And the Partnership for America's Children, who we're working with together on this outreach effort, has over 50 members who are multi-issue child advocacy organizations across 40 states. And their mission is to support its network of state and community child advocacy organizations in effective advocacy. Next slide. So what is the expanded CTC? So the expanded CTC came with the American Rescue Plan Act for tax year 2021. The first half of the expanded CTC reduced child poverty, and the first half also expanded. The first half of the expanded CTC also had significant impacts in reducing food insufficiency. And we're kind of in an interesting time right now where tax season has ended and we're getting ready for the launch of getctc.org, which we'll talk about a little bit here, but we're kind of in an in-between time. And our purpose in this presentation is for you to understand how people can still get the credit even though tax season has officially closed and what options are available to them. And one of those options, which we, like I said, we'll get into a little bit, is getctc.org. And that's going to be available in the coming weeks as an additional option for families to claim the credit outside of filing a tax return. Next slide. So Just a little background on the CTC. Families were eligible to receive the first half of the CTC in 2021 and half when they filed their taxes this year, or the full credit if they didn't get the advance payments. And those payouts began in July of 2021, and families received them automatically if they had filed taxes previously. Or if they hadn't, there was an option for a non-filer portal, which is getctc.org, where people could claim, do like an abbreviated tax return, claim the first half of the credit, and then they would have to file a tax return in 2021 to get the second half of the credit. The credit went up from previously being $2,000 to $3,600 per child ages 0 to 5 and $3,000 per child ages 6 through 17. There's no minimum income requirements. Families with no earned income are eligible for the full credit, and the credit is fully refundable, meaning families are eligible for the full amount even if they don't owe taxes. Next slide. And this is just an example of how much money is actually on the table for families. So if we're looking at a family with 3 kids, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 7-year-old, in total for the 2021 CTC, the family would receive $10,200. And in addition to that, they may also qualify for other monies through stimulus payments or other tax credits. Next slide. And the challenge is really that there are 4 million or more children at risk of missing out on CTC payments. And this is because their families have no or very low incomes, and they're not required to file taxes and may not have filed taxes ever or recently. These families may not have received the 2021 advanced CTC payments automatically, and will miss out on the credit altogether if they do not file their taxes this year or access the Get CTC portal once it goes live again. Black and Latino kids were disproportionately excluded from the full CTC before it was expanded, and are now more likely to miss out on it even if they're eligible. And trusted community organizations can really help these families claim the CTC, especially community health workers. That's why we were really interested in doing this presentation with NACHW, because we know that you are often on the ground talking to families one-on-one and have their trust, and can be a really important resource for them if you have this information on hand. And we also want to emphasize that you do not have to be a tax expert to help families. This training is not designed to make you a tax expert at all. It is designed for you to understand how the CTC works and where you can direct families to claim the credit. Next slide. So who is eligible for the 2021 CTC and how do families claim it? So adults may have a social security number or an individual taxpayer identification number, but children must have social security numbers, and their social security numbers must be valid for employment. The dependent must be the adult's child, including adopted, grandchild or stepchild, a younger sibling, step sibling, half sibling, or their descendant, or a foster child placed by a government agency. And the dependent must have lived with the adult in the US for more than half the year. So that's 6 months and a day. There's some exceptions, like the babies born in the second half of 2021. And the dependent did not provide over half of their own support in 2021 either. Next slide. So how do families claim the 2021 CTC? So as we mentioned, in 2021, most families automatically received the advanced CTC payments. This ranged from between $250 to $300 per child. And this happened from July through December. And this was mainly for families who already had filed taxes recently or in the system somehow. So the IRS had their information and were able to disperse this money. So this happened automatically. Families who weren't required to file taxes or didn't do so in 2019 or 2020 for other reasons had to take the extra steps to receive the advance payments, and that was by going on getctc.org. And now where we're at, everyone will need to file tax returns this year to receive the second half or full amount of the 2021 CTC. And when we say tax returns, filing tax returns, we either mean a paper return, which is still possible. There are exceptions to who can still do this, and we'll talk about that as well after tax season has closed, and also, or the Get CTC portal, which is essentially a shorter version of a tax return to claim the credit. Next slide. And so it's not too late, like I said, to claim the CTC. Heads of households with incomes below 18,800 or married couples who are filing jointly with incomes below 25,100 aren't required to file tax returns, but they must do so to claim the CTC. Individuals who are not required to file taxes can continue to claim the CTC without penalty. So that means, we're past April 18th now. Somebody didn't realize that they could get this credit. If they are within those income ranges, they can file their tax returns without penalty to get the credit. And individuals who have filing obligations but are due refunds can also continue to file without a penalty. So that's somebody who, for whatever reason, didn't file a tax return this year or hasn't yet, didn't request an extension, but they're actually going to get a refund back. They can actually still file their tax returns without a penalty in post April 18th time to claim the credit. And also important to note that individuals have 3 years to claim any tax credits they are owed. So we are encouraging everyone to pursue this right now, especially with Get CTC opening back up soon in the coming weeks. But there is a 3-year window to retroactively go back and claim this credit as well. Next slide. And this is just a timeline of the tax season. We are now in May of 2022. The Get CTC will be opening. We have May 18th here. This is still a tentative date, but we will be sharing that information once that's confirmed. And this portal will stay open through the fall of 2022. And as I mentioned, there's a 3-year time window to retroactively go back and receive these credits. So families essentially have until April 2025 to get this credit. But again, we're encouraging people to take action if they think families can qualify for this at this time. Next slide. So who might file a full return rather than file through Get CTC? So individuals whose incomes are above the filing threshold. So we went over those before. That's the 18,000 and the 25,000. Those individuals would need to actually file a return and not go through Get CTC. And individuals who can claim other state and federal tax credits by filing a full return, even if they're below those thresholds, it be worth it to them. So Get CTC, when it's ready and launched, will ask individuals questions to determine if they are eligible to file through the portal and whether they could benefit from full filing because they could get other credits that have been expanded, like the EITC. Next slide. And for individuals who want to file or need to file a full return to get the credit, the two main options are, or essentially one main option, you can identify a local VITA site for people. And that's the link there. We'll be sharing that link as well in the chat, and it will also be in all the resources we share with everyone after this webinar. So one thing to note though is that many VITA sites may be closed, especially if you're not in more of a city setting. But you can still go online, call and see if they're open and they're available to help people file their returns. We recommend calling sites ahead of time before showing up to confirm that they're open, obviously, and can provide assistance or if they're at capacity or if they have any sort of special rules of when people need to be in line, things like that. And also just important to note that married couples must both attend these appointments. Individuals can also go through getyourrefund.org. That's also available in English and Spanish. And there they can access free do-it-yourself tax filing services. And there's limited capacity for this, but they can get free virtual tax filing assistance, including the opportunity to discuss their situation with a tax specialist over the phone. Again, there's some limited capacity to that as well, and that's just something to keep in mind. Next slide. We also want to share the resource of the low income taxpayer clinics. These or LITCs, these help individuals with low incomes who have tax disputes with the IRS, or this is actually a resource for anyone who's already filed and didn't realize that they could claim the CTC or other credits. they can actually help individuals amend their tax returns so that they can claim the credit if they haven't done so already. Next slide. And finally, some families might need to find a paid tax preparers. If families do so, they should be careful that the preparers are submitting accurate returns on their behalf. We have a number of different resources on this, on guidance for individuals who are using paid tax preparers, how to ask the right questions and how to identify a reputable preparer for them to go to. And we'll share that link as well. And that's also in all our resources. Next slide. I also want to talk briefly about ITINs. So for families to claim the CTC, dependents must have social security numbers, as I mentioned before, but the parents and caregivers can have a social security number or an ITIN. To obtain the ITIN, individuals have to submit what's called Form W-7, along with proof of identity and foreign status documents with their tax returns. So it's typically a two-step process. So you have to do the ITIN application and then file the application with your tax return. You can't submit the ITIN application separately and then submit your tax return. The actual application, the form, has to be attached to a tax return. And one of the things we recommend to avoid having to mail in these personal documents is that families can be referred to IRS taxpayer assistance centers or with IRS authorized certifying acceptance agents to get their copies certified. So these are places that they don't file taxes. They actually do very little in-person help, but they will certify the documents that need to be certified with the Form W-7. And so by doing that, they don't have to submit those documents along with their tax return. And so they would go to this appointment. Also, we have heard from some of these sites as well that they don't actually help individuals fill out the Form W-7, that form actually, they have to come in with that form completed, but they would bring in that form, they would bring in all the documents that they need to bring in, that it would be certified, and then they could bring that to their tax appointment or their tax preparer to put with their tax return so that they can file for their ITIN. We have the Form W-7 also in our toolkits available and a list of the required documents and information on expired ITINs as well. So you'll be able to access that. Next slide. And we also have resources on what to bring to a tax appointment in general. It's available in both English and Spanish, and this is through the Get It Back campaign through the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. This is specifically for completed tax returns. We'll also have, as we're updating our resources, we will have what will be needed for getctc.org. Getctc.org does not require as many documents as a full return, but there are a few things that people do need to submit. Next slide. And finally, just a note on IRS letter 6419. This is a letter that was sent out to families showing how much they got for the CTC in the second half of 2021. These letters actually could be incorrect, and that's why we just want to make people aware of them. The IRS mailed, so for example, why would a letter be incorrect? So the IRS might have mailed a check to a family, but the family may have moved and the IRS didn't update their records showing the return check. So the family gets a letter saying that they got this amount of money that they actually never got because they never got the check and it was never cashed. Another thing they also did was that they sent 2 letters to both members of a married couple with half of the amount received. These aren't duplicate letters, and both letters should be used when they're filing a full tax return. And we recommend, if anyone receives a letter or if somebody comes to you and says, you know, we got this letter, but we never got this money or the amount is wrong, they should check the IRS online account. This is where the most up-to-date amount is available, and use that when filing their returns. Next slide. So we just want to talk briefly now about some common barriers and concerns that have come up and some questions that that families and providers usually have. So a lot of these questions come from a set of focus groups that we did last fall. And these were some of the different responses and thoughts that people had and concerns that they had around the CTC. So a lot of people responded well to language emphasizing the help CTC provided for the whole family, but did not necessarily respond well to findings about long-term benefits to children. Not a lot of people didn't realize that the CTC was even expanded and that people who weren't eligible in the past now are. Many people believe that they had to work to get the credit. There was a fear of having to pay the IRS back if they weren't entitled to the credit. There was also a fear around owing back taxes, or a fear that they would lose other benefits such as SNAP. There were immigration concerns, language and barriers access concerns. There were questions around claiming a child born in 2021 that couldn't be done on the portal in 2021, but can now be done via tax return and will also be able to be done on the portal as it reopens. There were complaints about difficulty getting through the IRS if they have a question, and then just a general desire for in-person help. Next slide. So let's go over some of these. Does receiving the CTC impact other public benefits? And the answer to that is no. Getting this credit will not change any federally funded public benefits that a family receives, like Social Security, SNAP, childcare subsidies, or WIC. Next slide. Will an individual ever have to pay this money back? So the CTC is not alone. If someone receives payments for a child who is no longer their dependent, they may have to pay that money back, but there are some protections for those with incomes below 40,000. So 50,000 for heads of households and 60,000 for married couples. And there are some more limited protections for those with incomes below 80,000. This is individuals or non-custodial parents, 100,000 for single head of household, and 120,000 for couples filing jointly. Next slide. And what if someone has not filed tax returns in recent years? People with very low incomes, so again, that's the under 18,800 for head of household, 25,100 for married filing jointly, are generally not required to file. Even if they were required to file, there's generally not a penalty if the IRS owes someone a refund, as we mentioned before, and this can be perhaps from something like the EITC. And taxpayers can file for the past 3 years to receive the refunds they are owed. We also talked about that earlier as well. So even if someone owes child support or taxes, they can benefit from claiming the CTC because the credit will go towards paying off the outstanding debt. And if there's anything left over, they'll receive they will receive that amount. And if it all goes towards what is owed, that reduces their debt. And it just means that in the future, they can claim the credit and get the full amount. Next slide. Will receiving the CTC affect someone's immigration status or ability to get a green card? And the answer to that is also no. Under current law, receiving the CTC or other tax credits won't affect a person's immigration status, their ability to get a green card, or future immigration plans. The use of tax credit is not considered a public charge by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration. Next slide. Will the IRS share someone's immigration status with other government agencies? The answer to that is also no. The IRS is forbidden to share any individual's tax information with other agencies. There's exceptions to this, and these are related to certain criminal investigations or just to determine someone's tax liability. In those situations, if someone is concerned about that, we recommend that you refer them to an immigration or tax specialist for their particular case. Next slide. And so, as I mentioned, we have toolkits that we'll be sharing with you for you to access and have access to a lot of these links, to all of these links actually that we've shared with you. And it includes an FAQ that addresses these questions we just went over and many, many other questions that you might have as well. Next slide. Okay, and then finally, I just want to talk about CTC outreach and what kind of resources are in our toolkit that you might be able to utilize. So outreach and what works. So outreach that's integrated with existing programs and communications is really effective, meaning just like yourselves or providers or any program that are already on the ground doing outreach and connecting with communities, having this information on hand can be really effective to share all these updates on the CTC for families and communities that might not realize that this is now available to them. Also providing families with multilingual information multiple times is really helpful. Outreach should include clear info on how to claim the credit. So flyers or text messages direct people to getctc.org, for example, or give them information on Get Your Refund or VITA sites. Many families will not need additional assistance filing after they're directed to getctc.org. So once this tool is available, it's a pretty easy to use tool. And we've found that actually having to have families have an appointment with somebody to navigate it isn't necessary. And sometimes it would actually keep people from following through with the process. So just getting people to getctc.org might be enough. And then if people need additional assistance and it's requested, having that available is great as well. Next slide. And school districts and government agencies are among the most trusted sources of information for families, as well as text messages, for example, from schools or agencies have been especially effective. Also, robocalls and mailers can be effective. And in addition to hearing from trusted community messengers, families may need to hear from tax, immigration, and family law experts. So combining that resource of community health workers and then also the other resources available in the community, like immigration specialists, all of that can really help families to feel comfortable with the process and be able to follow through and claim the credit. Next slide. So there's two different levels of effective outreach that we've identified. So level 1 is just raising awareness in general, and level 2 is a deeper engagement with families. And so we'll go over that now. So what does level 1 outreach activities look like? You can sending mass text messages, robocalls, or emails. Text, as I mentioned, have been proven to be especially effective, but it's helpful to communicate to families through lots of different methods. These are 2 different sample texts that we have. These are also available in our toolkits. You'll have access to this. These are also going to be slightly updated once getCTC opens. And so those will also live in the toolkit if you are interested in sending text messages to a large number of families or clients, anything like that, you could use those. Next slide. Recording phone hold messages or video messages for waiting rooms and office screens can be really effective as well. This is, again, another script. This will also be updated and in the toolkit for once getCTC opens up and ready to use if anyone's interested in that. And as we all know, hanging posters in waiting rooms and other public spaces can be really effective where people are sitting and waiting. They can see the information, distributing flyers and sending home flyers and backpacks as well. Also very effective. These are 2 screenshots of different flyers that are in the toolkit. And again, they're ready to use, ready to be printed out, and also will be updated once getCTC is up and running. Next slide. And where possible, adding a CTC related question to any existing intake forms. So if you're asking families questions already as part of an intake process, asking them if they know that getCTC has been expanded to individuals who don't have earned income, or who now that is available to children who are 17 years old as it previously wasn't. These can be really effective to include to help screen for where families could qualify for this and may not realize it. And adding flyers and FAQs to resources already going out to families. So if you're providing resources, sending them flyers, anything like that, adding an additional flyer on CTC can also be really effective. I see that someone has raised their hand, Vashon. Do you want to ask a question or type it in the chat? I'm happy to answer it. Okay, I think we can also unmute you if you want to. I don't know if Vishan is still there, but Vishan, if you're still there and you want to pop your question in the chat, we can also unmute you. Oh, there you are. Okay. Okay, Vishan, if you, I'm not sure where Vishan went, but if you have it, oh, it was a mistake. Okay, sounds good.
Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. Just wanted to make sure we got to your question if you had one. Okay, so next slide. As we also mentioned before, anyone who has relationships already with state and local benefit agencies or school districts, encouraging them to send out mass communications to families can be really effective. We also have a public agency toolkit, and if anyone's interested in that as well, available. Next slide. And then if you have a newsletter going out or you regularly post on social media, this is also a great place to share CTC information. We have a lot of different social media posts ready to go that literally you just have to copy and put up on your social media to share. And that can also be a great way to reach families. Next slide. And level 2 outreach activities, what do those look like? So these are activities for more on the ground community integrated individuals. And so one thing, for example, is holding a phone bank or conducting peer-to-peer texting to share information out to each other and to other community members on the CTC. Also hosting a Q&A with a tax specialist, immigration attorney, or other subject matter expert, or someone like us to share out and be available for people to ask questions around the CTC. Next slide. And also, where it's possible, assisting families in gathering the information they will need to file and get CTC. That's really why we're here today and why we're offering all the different resources that we have, so that you can have that to bring to families. Sharing the Get CTC Navigator training with staff so they can support families as needed. This will be available also later this month. And we'll share that information out with NACHW and yourselves. So that you can have that information as well. Making technology and Wi-Fi available to families who want to file through Get CTC or do it yourself full filing. This can also include having individuals present to help answer basic technology or filing questions. So, if there's a computer lab somewhere or some iPads or anything like that, making that available to families. And also perhaps having somebody there that might be able to answer some light questions around Get CTC can also be really helpful and effective for getting people to claim, getting people through the process of claim the credit. And for families who need additional support, providing assistance in filing through Get CTC. As we mentioned, a lot of families might not need any assistance beyond knowing that Get CTC is available, if that's an option that's available to them beyond not the full filing. But some families might need that assistance, and being able to help them navigate the tool will also be really helpful. Next slide. And this is just a short list of all the different stuff that's in our toolkit. We have a toolkit that's specifically for providers. We have a toolkit that's for families that's ready to go and to share out to families, and has a lot of the basic information that a family will need, the different forms we talked about, things like that. And then we also have a public agency toolkit also available. And if you're interested, you can sign up for our listserv. Our listserv is where we share out any information on upcoming trainings that are open to the public, on any updates on the CTC. We'll definitely be sharing information on getctc.org through there as well, and any sort of CTC related content that we find is important for the community to know about. Next slide. And we'll open up to Q&A now. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, so Julia has shared the listserv in the chat. I saw that Roxana had raised her hand. I don't know if Roxana, you want to share, you want to type in the chat if you have any questions. Okay, so Fortunata, I work with refugees, families, and would like to get resources about child credits. So I think Julia just put in our toolkit in there. So that has all sorts of different resources, all the different things that we talked about, all the links that were in this presentation are in there. So you should be able to access those. I don't know if you have a specific resource you're looking for, or just the resources in general. Just let us know. Also, we can unmute you as well if you're. Hi, Roxana.
Hi, sorry, I accidentally hit the button, but I do have a question. Now that you've called on me. So is this just for those individuals who did not receive the child tax credit previously?
So this is for individuals who didn't receive it at all last year, or individuals who only got the first half and never followed through to get the second half of the credit. So if anyone got money in 2021, at the end of 2021, they actually only got half of the credit. So they would need to take next steps if they haven't already filed their taxes to get the second half.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. And we already answered one of those. Okay, we will, we'll give it a few more minutes if anyone else, folks have any other questions they want to pop in the chat. Okay, sorry, being late. I need resources for child tax credit information. Thanks. So Fortunata, yes, my colleague Julia put the toolkit in the link. Everybody's also going to get a follow-up email with the slide deck that I use and all of the different links, all the different resources for you to use. And that should be going out in the next day or two. Anyone else have any other questions? Okay, what is the highest yearly income one can receive before they are not eligible for CTC? I think it starts to phase out at those higher protections incomes, and Julia, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but after, I think above 80,000 for head of household and maybe 100,000 for couples, it starts to phase out and become lower. I'm not sure exactly where it cuts off and you're completely ineligible.
Yeah, so the phase out's actually higher, and let me put in the chat. I think the first phase out isn't until $150,000 actually.
Great.
And then it continues to kind of phase out as you make more money. I think there's another phase out after like $400,000, so significantly more money. So generally doesn't tend to be income levels for most of the folks that our partners are working with. The vast majority of families can get this, but let me put in the exact number in the chat right now.
Okay. Thanks, Julia. And Julia also mentioned in the chat, I can add my email in here as well. Anyone is free to follow up with us on resources or anything in specific languages. We're happy to share that.
Great. And so I'm putting this in the chat. It's kind of a long link, but you'll see there. The first phase out is $150,000 if you're married, and then $112,500, which is head of household, which Alini mentioned. So that's like if you're a single parent. And then a single filer would be 75,000, but that likely most would probably fit into one of those two categories.
Right.
But even after that, you still can get a lot of the credit. And then there's a second phase out, as I mentioned, $400,000 if someone's married and filing jointly, or $200,000 for all of their filing statuses. So not likely to impact necessarily most of the families you work with, although potentially that first phase out, but you can check out those numbers in this link.
Great. Thank you, Julia. Okay, if there are no more questions, we will wrap up. Thank you everyone for joining us. We want to thank Aurora from National Association of CHWs for being here as well, for hosting us, for making all of this information available. We know that many of you are on the ground with families that this can likely impact, and we're happy to get this information out. And like I said, we'll have all these resources sent out in emails, but also feel free to reach out if you have any sort of other questions or looking for something more specific. And we'll be sharing with Aurora and her team information on the launch of Get CTC. And hopefully we can be in touch in the future as we move through the next phase of outreach. Thank you so much, everyone.